everyone. I am Namita, and you are watching the dog-friendly games for kids, bonding with safety in mind. So I want to be very honest. I do not have kids, but I think the one thing that I do have is a lot of experience with working with animals and understanding how often they are misunderstood. And so with my background and experience with my multiple certifications and work with behavior related issues, I have learned quite a bit, and I think that I can provide some insight to you all today about how we're going to keep our dogs and our kids safe when they're interacting with each other. So we want to start off with obviously understanding why are children at risk when it comes to dogs, right? The thing is that dogs are silently communicating all the time, and children and dogs speak completely different languages, obviously. And the biggest thing is that children are very unpredictable. So they look very different from other adults. They don't move as predictably. They are loud, playful, their hands and legs are moving in all directions, and that's totally fine, but that's not something that our dogs are used to seeing, and so it can be very scary for them. And some other things that lead to bites often are appeasement signs that are often mistaken for love. So appeasement would be when the animal is trying to indicate in some way, I don't mean any harm to you. I'm just, I'm here. I don't want to engage, but I don't mean any harm. And so they could look like licking the person or even wagging their tail and sort of like getting into their space, but trying to tell them very politely, I don't like this. And so often those behaviors could be misunderstood as actually affection and love. And that's when things go down south, because we don't know what that looks like. And then also both parties deserve to be safe, right? Like both children as well as dogs need to feel safe when they're interacting with each other or are around each other. And the simplest thing I would ask is, would you leave another toddler to take care of a child? And that's kind of what we're doing here when we are expecting our dogs to be able to self-regulate and somehow know what the right thing to do is when we're leaving them alone or mindly supervised with a child, because our dogs are very intelligent. However, their cognition is not more than pretty much a toddler. And so they don't know why they feel dysregulated and that they need to control themselves in those moments. Those kind of things are not what come naturally to them. So it's not fair to keep them responsible for our children, right? All right. And then I think the number one thing is people always say that, it came out of nowhere. But oftentimes, even though it seems like it comes out of nowhere, there are several signs of discomfort before which your dog is going to go for the big one, biting, right? So something to keep in mind is that there are multiple things at play here. So obviously genetics plays a part in what kind of fears your dogs have, what are their, what makes them anxious, what makes them uncomfortable, what kind of movements are okay and not okay for them. Health plays a very important role. So if they're in pain or somehow their tummy is upset or anything that's even more long-term and chronic could be affecting whether or not they have the ability to handle unpredictable interactions from other humans. And then learning plays a very important role, and learning has a lot to do with this ladder of aggression that we'll talk about in a bit. And finally, obviously, trauma. So if they've had any prior negative experiences around children or even humans in general, they could be more likely to show signs of aggression around humans in general, but also children in particular, because of how unpredictable children can be. And the most important thing to understand is the signs that we're seeing down here in the bottom section, walking away, moving to a different spot, looking away. Those are very subtle signs. And If the dog learns that these signs don't usually work for me, I'm not able to get the distance I need from this human, then they tend to learn that it's better to creep up to the higher levels. And then eventually, as they learn that all the low level behaviors are not working, they will tend to go for the really all out there, obvious growling, snapping, lunging, and sometimes even biting. And our job is to help our dogs stay in this happy green space and really reinforce these behaviors down here so that we see more of that and a less of, we don't see the, it's not so much that we don't want to see these behaviors, but it's that we don't want them to think that that's how they need to communicate with us. They can communicate with us in these subtle ways, and we will come in and help them. So that's pretty much like a background on why is it that we do actually care about making sure that our dogs and children are, obviously always monitored. So before we even get into the games, I do want to talk about a few safety things in mind, right? First and foremost, if your dog has any sort of bite history and or shows fear or aggression towards any humans, let alone children, I do not recommend trying to introduce children to them without the guidance and step-by-step plan with a qualified professional, because it's just not worth the risk. Neither parties, the dog nor the child, deserve to feel unsafe or be put at risk. So if there is any sort of bite history, I recommend that you speak with a qualified professional and have a plan and go through these things before you can even consider having them in a safe space together, right? That being said, if you are just sort of like thinking of what are the ways that I could maybe have them interact with each other and they're okay with children, but I still want to make sure that both the dog and the child feel safe. So these are the three things I definitely want you to keep in mind. Your eyes have to be on the child and the dog at all times. They shouldn't be hanging out without any supervision. And oftentimes, depending on the age of the child, obviously we might cut down on how much supervision we are doing. But I still think that that could be something that is what that tipping point between when something happens all of a sudden and you're like, I don't know where he came, how did he do that? Like, I don't understand it. It's because we're not listening to those low level warnings that our dog is giving. So I always recommend that you are having your eyes on both the child and the dog if they are in the same space together, and never just leave them alone to sort of their own devices. And then remember that barriers are your friends. So picking areas in your home that are safe for the dog, safe for the human children, keeping safe areas for each of those would be really helpful. And there's several ways you can do that. And finally, making sure that before they interact with each other, their individual needs are met, so that we're not sort of expecting the dog to fill the cup of the child or the child to fill the cup of the dog. And that's really important, because if we're not feeling regulated and happy and our needs are not met, and then we're going and interacting with another animal that is speaking a completely different language, we're more likely to be really grumpy and not necessarily read the other person's signals and things like that. So both the child as well as the dog, their needs need to be met first individually before they can interact with each other, so that they're successfully going to engage with each other instead of sort of like in some way antagonizing each other. And some important safety aids for you would be baby gates. They come in several different configurations that you can use to section off areas of your home, as well as just to put on your doors so that you have separate areas. I also think that some of the games that we're going to play, I would recommend having a baby gate between the child and the dog in the beginning stages until you're really confident that they are okay to be in the same area. And some of the games you can actually play them with the barrier in the middle, and that's the beauty of it. Exercise pens are more, I would say, not permanent structures that can be moved a little bit more. They come in 8 panels. They sometimes come in 2 panels as well. And if you are someone like me who likes to take extra caution in everything, just because I want everybody to feel safe, muzzles are another really great tool to have and get your dogs comfortable with so that they can interact. And if anything goes wrong, there's no harm done. That being said, you don't use a muzzle like a excuse for your dog to just have to bite over and over again. We're trying to just prevent a dangerous bite from happening. But if we are seeing a dog that is showing any sort of discomfort around children, you do need to speak with a professional to help you through those steps. Some other things that I think I haven't mentioned here are tethers. So like tethering your dog to something that is strong so that if they do go really close to the child, there's something holding them back. And those are all optional and depending on what the age groups we're talking about with children and dogs, obviously. All right, that being said, something else that I think can really help with dogs and children is to have a safe space for your dog, a refuge sort of area. And usually we talk about this with regards to, fireworks, thunderstorms, those kind of things where we want a place for them to go and be where there's less sounds, less stimulus, and they're feeling safe. But I also think that any home that has children or any sort of a very busy home environment, your dog does require that refuge, that place where if they are feeling overwhelmed by everything, they have a space to go to where they're kind of able to sleep it off or like not be fully introduced to all those stimuluses all the time. And some of the options are a spare room. Obviously, if you have a spare room, many of us have very small homes. You can also use the corner of your bed as an area that is made safe, or like you see in the picture, a spare closet or under the stairs. And in the worst case scenario, you could use a bathroom. But that's like, usually we recommend those things for like fireworks and thunderstorms, but why not as like a backup plan? All right, so why are we picking any of these games that you're going to see today or tasks that you're going to see today? Basically, what we're trying to do is instead of telling our kids what not to do, like, don't do this to the dog, don't do that to the dog. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Of course, you do have to have certain boundaries, but I also knowing how learning works and knowing that that's the same principle we apply to dogs is that we want to tell them what they can do versus what they can't do. And the games that we're going to talk about today are very easy on the dog as well as on the kids. And most importantly, most of the games that we're going to talk about are hands-off games. So we're not really touching the dog that much. We're not getting into the dog's spaces. So we are still interacting with our dog, but not necessarily putting the dog in some kind of pressure situation where they may be making poor decisions, right? All right, so before we even get into the games, I know I said that already, but once again, there are three things. There's something important to remember. There are three learners in this particular equation. There's you, the parent, who is learning this, and hopefully today is better equipped, but also it's absolutely necessary that you also understand the steps and practice it all by yourself. If you have to, I totally do that when I'm like, it's too many steps, I can't handle it. I practice without the dog or by myself, then I do it with the dog. So you're one learner, the other learner is the child, and then the third learner is the dog. And whenever we're teaching any of these games, you're going to individually teach the child and individually the dog. So you can either teach the child first or the dog first, it really doesn't matter, but they do need to learn individually what the game is. And then you're going to help them play together. And hopefully with practice and repetition, you're not going to need to sort of help that much, but mostly just supervise. All right. All right. So the first game, sorry, I'm going to pause that. The first game is called 1, 2, 3. You're going to count 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to feed the dog. You can feed the dog either to their mouth, like you will see in this video, or on the floor. And the goal is that the dog starts anticipating a treat on hearing 3. Please let me know if y'all cannot hear the video.
Called 1, 2, 3. We're going to say 1, 2, 3. Feed the dog. 1, 2, 3. Feed the dog. You can also sit and start this game. 1, 2,
Okay, so we finished step one. We've taught the dog how to play the game, and you obviously can build on this game. At this point, this is just the first introduction to the dog. All they have to do is wait for you to say 3, and then you deliver a treat. Depending on the age of your child, you may just want to only teach them this step, and you're not really bothered about the rest of it for your dog as well at that point, because you're not really doing these games to get your children to train your dogs. You're just helping them interact with their dogs in a safe way. So we're not necessarily worried about the next steps of this game with the dog, because we're talking about children and dogs here. But if you are curious to see what that looks like, in this next video, you're going to see me using that particular game to walk with my dog here, and sort of eventually you'll see him responding to a trigger while I'm using this game. And so the reason, again, we're using this game is it's predictable, it's easy, and it's regulating his nervous system. Some of the places you can use this game are leash walking, so helping your dog through really busy environments and you're trying to get them to, like, focus on something as you pass something really scary. You can use them for cooperative care. So when you start brushing your dog, you say 1, 2, 3, and then as soon as you've said 3, you stop brushing. And so that way you have a more predictable pattern of behavior and your dog knows what to expect. It's also great for vet visits. So if your dog's getting checked somewhere, you can tell your vet, I'm going to count up to 3. And as soon as we say 3, we're going to take hands off. This is just how my dog feels comfortable. And so you probably are checking their teeth. You say 1, 2, 3. And then as soon as you say 3, everybody's hands are off. And of course, we also use this game as a therapy tool around triggers at a large distance. But again, that's not necessarily the point of our webinar today. This is just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So here we go. We're going to see Elliot walking with me while I'm doing it. So that's like a little bit of a later stage in the game with dog.
1, 2, 3. One, two, three. Yes.
So he sees something at a faraway distance and he was extremely intrigued. But as soon as I started counting, you can see as soon as I say 3, he's back to me. And now you're going to see how his body language softens when he goes back to check it out.
1, 2, 3. Good boy. Good job. Good boy.
So even though he was a bit worried about it in the end, he wasn't as stiff as you see at the beginning here when he is looking at that particular trigger. He's a lot more alert, and something before the video was actually playing was he was far more alert than that. But obviously we want to keep the videos really short. But you see what I mean when I say that we can use these games to regulate your animals. But when we're doing it with our kids, what are we going to do? So here we go. Here is a 2-year-old learning how to play this game. So the first step is you're going to demo the game for your child, and then you're going to try to do it together. So you're probably going to count for them if they are very young, like this child is in the video. And if they're older, obviously they can do it on their own. But you're going to demo it, and then you're going to help them do it, and then let them try. And then eventually you'll probably not need to help. Here we go.
Okay, can you come stand here? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, and throw a treat. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Can you try? Yeah. You want to stand up? Okay, 1, wait. You got to wait for 3. 1, 2, 3. Throw it. Try again. Hold on, wait. 1, 2, 3. Throw it. Yeah, good job. Can you throw it on 3? We'll get Ellie after. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Throw it. Yeah, good job. You want to do it again? Okay, wait. You gotta wait for 3. 1, 2, 3. Throw it. Yeah, good job. More. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Good job.
So really cute here when it's a really young child, obviously they will take a few repetitions to understand what the step is, and you can see why we don't have the dog at this stage. Obviously, if it's a much older child, you probably will not need to do that many repetitions. Sorry, my words are just all over the place. Yeah, so when it's an older child, you may not need to do that many repetitions, but you can see how the child is sort of understanding the pattern, and slowly and steadily with each repetition, they are getting better at listening for the 3 and then throwing the treat. I found this video extremely adorable because it was indicative of exactly how our dogs learn. Our dogs are predicting that when you say 3, you're going to give me that treat. And that's exactly what happened here. But the consequence is not getting the treat, but the consequence is I get to throw the treat when mommy says 3. And so that's really beautiful because it's both the dog and the child learning, and that made me really excited. So now we're going to see how Isla does with her dog Ellie. Play the same game.
1, 2, 3. Good job. 1, 2, 3. Good job. Here. 1, 2, 3. Good job. Wait. 1, 2, 3. Good work. 1, 2, 3. Throw it. Good job. Nice work, Isla.
So yeah, it's a super easy game, and to their credit, I told them a few days ago that would you be able to help me make this video? So fair warning, everybody here in the videos are all just people that I have not met in a long time because they're good friends, but they don't stay close, or they're followers on Instagram. And everybody has just done this the first time that I'm instructing them. I haven't given them much feedback or anything. These are raw videos. And the reason I'm showing you all raw videos is to show you how simple it can be, and that it could be a little messy and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's possible. And so you can see how quickly she learned the game. This is probably on the same day because I don't think it was just a couple days ago, and they just sent me everything together. One thing to note though is that I do want to make sure that your children are enjoying the game as much as the dog is. I am an advocate for all learners enjoying the process, and no one needs to be frustrated, right? And so one thing that could have helped in this situation, and if mom was my client, my feedback would be, this was great, this was awesome. Next time, maybe we cut the treats up together in advance so that the packet is not in the picture, because if you can see, the child is very curious about the packet and wants the packet, but to her credit, she still wants to throw the treat on time, which I truly appreciate.
1, 2,
But
1, 2, 3. Good job. Wait.
right there, she gets a bit frustrated because mommy won't give her the packet. And so again, I'm just nitpicking here. You know, you don't have to worry about these things, but I do want the children to have a good time when they're playing the game. So something that we could have done in this particular situation is already break the treats into tiny pieces, so we don't have to hold the packet away just in case the child's going to take a big one and throw it. And then just have that treat as like the only thing in the picture, right? And that would make it easier. Another aspect that I think would have that I would personally recommend for many people is to have a barrier between the dog and the child, because again, every dog is different and their comfort level of being around children is different. They've worked a lot on letting their dog and their child be in the same space. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but you can definitely play this game with a barrier in the middle so that the child sort of just tosses it away and it falls over to the other side of the barrier and the dog is safe from the child. And the child is safe because the dog isn't rushing after them. You certainly would want to use a barrier with a dog that is impatient around food. This dog clearly seems to be quite happy to wait at the distance. And the beauty of this game is that, and the reason we're not hand feeding the dog instead of, why are we tossing the treat instead of hand feeding, is because we want to take the pressure away. We don't want the dog to have to come close to something that is not necessarily safe always because it's unpredictable. And instead we're just like, oh, I can sit back here and enjoy with this person. That's great. And that's what I want for the dog as well. So that's why we're tossing the treat and not necessarily feeding it from the hand, because that can be really hard for some dogs. Many dogs, actually. It's a lot harder for dogs than we think it is. All right. The next game is pretty popular. Almost every client that I have now at this point does always kind of know a version of this game. It's called Find It. And we're going to watch how Isla learns it because, again, it's great to see how a young child, this young, can learn it so quickly, and it's that simple. All right, here we go. You're going to say find it, and then you're going to toss the treat away from you. And the goal is that the dog starts to anticipate food on the ground when they hear find it.
Game, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Mama's going to say find it, and then we're going to throw the treat. Okay? So we're going to say find it. Can you do it? You say find it. Yeah, good job. And find it. Good work. Find it. Nice. Find it. Good work.
Lots of enthusiasm and joy for throwing things around, which is totally age appropriate for children at that time. And you can see how easy it was for her to do this. And I definitely do have a video of her doing it with Ellie after this. But what I'm going to instead show you all is an older child playing the same game with a lot of enthusiasm. And we can, once we've seen the video, we can talk a bit about what the benefits of this game is.
I think we're from the same place.
It does.
No, we'll do a couple fights.
Yeah, that's fine.
Gizmo. Gizmo. Find it. You had a lot more worse than cheese fun. Okay, Giz, ready? Find it. I always going to glob. Okay, Gizmo. Find it.
Oh, he's like jackpot.
We need to get all the cheese. All the cheese.
I absolutely love how adorable he is and how he says, small, find it, or ready. So yeah, you can see that the biggest thing about this game is it takes spatial pressure off, right? Like, so you're not getting into the dog's space. The dog is not having to get into your space or get closer to you, and therefore there is no conflict in that situation. And so you're allowing the dog to choose the distance that they want to be at when they want to interact with the children, and that's the beauty of it. And it's also a lot of fun to watch the dog go chase after trees. Over here we're using chicken, so cheese, because that's what they had that day, and it's a little more sticky, so it won't flow as much. But if you're using kibble, for example, it can really roll in different directions, and it can be really fun watching your dogs chase after it. What I really like here is that Gizmo had a blanket, so he had a little more traction when he was running around. Blankets are not necessarily as good a traction, but it's always a good idea to, you know, have traction in your home so that your dogs are not slipping when they're running around and doing these kind of games. But getting back to what the benefit of Find It is. Find It is mentally stimulating. It stimulates sniffing. So when you're playing this game outside with your dogs, you're going to be able to help them sniff a little bit more if they're not necessarily doing that naturally. You can toss some treats in the grass somewhere and then they have to sort of sniff it out. And you want both the games that we're talking, or all the next game and this one and the previous one. So Find It 1, 2, 3 and the next one. They're all games that need a lot of repetition to get really good at and be able to use it for therapy for reactive dogs or sensitive dogs. And so if you do have a dog that is sensitive and has big feelings, you do need a lot of repetitions of these games in happy, comfortable situations. And your children are the best place that they can play this if they're playing it in a way that both the child and the dog are safe, right? And so this helps your dog stimulate sniffing. So when you're having all these repetitions at home, but then when you're using it outside, your dog's like, oh, I remember that game. I love that game. And then they're willing to play it a little bit more. And you can use this game to help them sniff a bit better. Over here actually is a great example of when they're using it on the blanket. The dog will have to, if it wasn't a cheese, it was something more similar to the color of the blanket, the dog would have had to use their nose to sniff. So that's another way that this game really helps with sniffing. And if your dog is sensitive and reactive to triggers, it helps you move away from triggers. So you toss the treat further away and then it helps your dog and you move. And we also use it for therapy around triggers at a large distance. All right. The next game is up, down. The steps are pretty simple. You place a treat down on the floor, you let the dog eat the treat, and most likely when the dog is done eating, they'll probably look up to you to go like, what's next? And the moment they do that, you're going to say yes, and then you're going to put another treat down. And basically the dog starts to look to you quicker, anticipating food because they're understanding that you will be giving them a treat for looking at them. So benefits of this game are that instead of asking our dog, look at me, you're sort of capturing their offered attention. And that happens automatically just because of the way the game is set up. And the dog learns to look at you for reinforcement. And of course, we also use this game for therapy around triggers at a large distance. I don't have a video of this game with children, but it's super easy and you'll see why. You'll have no problem trying it with any child of any age group. And maybe I would try this with kids over 4, just so that we have a little more. I don't want to risk anything if it's a very young child. So use your discretion about when is the safest time, what age is the safest time to introduce this particular game.
Right? So what we're going to do is put our cookie down. And then when he looks up, we say yes. And put a cookie down. Yes. Cookie down. Yes. 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 Nice. Find it. We're gonna.
So another thing that I thought of while I was even watching the video is that you could always just toss the treat away instead of putting it right down for children, just to give them a more safety and distance from the dog, as well as for the dog to have more distance from the children. So if your dog is a little more sensitive about being really close to the children, excuse me. If your dog is a bit more sensitive about being close to the children, you can always tell them to mark when the dog looks at them and then toss a treat away. So say find it and toss it away, and then wait for the dog to eat that and come back and sort of look towards them. And the moment they look towards them, yes, and do the same thing again. There's always room to modify this game in that sense. So that's another way to sort of adapt based on the age and the particular dog that we're talking about here. All right. Next thing I want to talk about is free work. And so free work essentially is a scavenging or a foraging setup for your dog. And on the right here, you can see a picture of Karishma War from Calm Canine Academy, someone I work with, who is setting up sort of like a scavenger hunt for her dog, for their dog. They are using some fitness equipment here that they do have canine fitness equipment. They are using rugs as well as their muzzle. And there is some peanut butter spread out over here on this donut fitness equipment. There are some papers wrapped with treats. So it's pretty much whatever works, right? Like whatever you have around the house can be used. And the whole idea is you're allowing your dog to practice natural behaviors that as a result of domestication, they have had to cut down on. So natural behaviors are things like shredding, licking, sniffing, digging. These kind of things were what were a part of their normal repertoire of behaviors when they were looking for food and consuming that food. And so bringing that back in is really essential for our dogs, and giving them multi-sensory experiences, texture, smell, visually, taste-wise, all those kind of things can be really good for our dogs. And I often encourage, since I've learned about this from Calm Canine Academy, but I'm sure there are other professionals that first talked about this. But since I have learned about this, I have made sure that every single client knows about it, and that I try to tell them to do it once every day if you can, but if not, at least 2 to 3 times a week, so that your dogs have sort of these opportunities to practice natural behaviors. And it looks a lot more natural than just one activity. So sure, lots of people are doing, you know, a Kong or a lick mat separately or things like that, which is all great, but this is another way to sort of up your game. And the beauty of it is it keeps it normal, right? It is never going to be the same, because you're going to look into your recycle bin and look for things that you have and decide what to do accordingly. And you're able to use anything around your house, unlike toys that are bought from the store, that like puzzles that repetitively kind of are the same thing, and your dog is doing the same thing over and over again. They don't mimic nature the same way as you setting up things like that. And so you want to use what you have and get creative. And the beauty of it is your children can help you.
Okay, so
The beauty of it is your children can help you do these setups. And that's a great way to involve them in something that their dog is going to do. It's an excellent activity for them to sort of get creative and see what they're going to do with that recycle. So we're going to have a couple kids here trying to do a setup for their dog, Gizmo, and let's see what they do.
you guys have his breakfast, some cheese and some treats and some recycling. So what you're gonna do is, and a hungry puppy, is you're gonna set up a little obstacle course for him.
Okay.
And you can just place it all over.
I really don't know what to do. Okay. Try to get in here.
I really love how creative the kids were. It's a really long video.
Make sure you're making it so he'll be successful, right?
I love how mom steps in only when she needs to let them know something specific, like making
Those cups, Jackson, because it's a slippery floor, just put them on top of one of his footstools. Yeah, but leave the footstool over there. Or, no.
loving that she only interrupts.
I need one little cup. One little cup here and that there. We still have so much food. There we go.
Excited puppy.
Let's take some of this. Right there. Okay, coast is ready.
Okay.
So what I love about this video is that mom has set everything up already. She's brought the recycled outside, and she's also put some food on the table, and she's like, these are the items you have, and you can do whatever you want. And then the dog has been taken out of the setup so that the dog isn't coming in the way or not getting, moved around or accidentally stepped on and things like that. You also see a really nice barrier between where the kids are and the dog is, and they have these set up for their home, which is excellent. And you can see baby gates and crates and everything are all around their home. Fantastic. And the children, as you can see through the video, are a little more enthusiastic about what they want to do. And initially, the boy, Jackson, is a little bit more, I don't know what to do with it. And then eventually, of course, they are able to do different setups. And at some point, the other child was like, where are the cups? And so it's really nice. And the parent only interrupts wherever there is need to help, whether it's reminding them that the dog needs to be able to do these tasks and or talking about traction. Speaking of traction, I would have really liked if there was like a nice big area rug or some rubber mat down here so that the dog has more traction, but that's okay. And then the beauty of it is your kids get to see their work and see what their dog does and how does their dog solve these problems. And I cannot emphasize enough how enriching that has been for my life to watch this, to really observe how your animal is going to solve that problem, to see how resilient they are, to see how creative they are. And the benefit for the children is going to pretty much be the same, but also they get to learn what kind of setups worked for their dog and what didn't. And the next time that they've set up things, they're going to be a little more mindful about it. And so I think this is a mentally stimulating activity for them as well. And obviously you don't want to force them into doing anything. And you'll see in this video, the parent instructs the children, hey, if you don't want to be there, you can definitely walk away, which I really love. And so let's watch them enjoy their work.
Ready, buddy? Go in. Have the best one you want.
This is gonna go horrible.
This is sketchy. No?
And if you feel done at any point, you're good to go.
It's also a great idea for dogs to be doing their own enrichment setup while the children are doing their own activities on the other side of the gate. And this is a great example of the setup, the way their home is set up, that if the kids were doing something on the other side of the fence, it would still be comfortable for their dog. And so the rest of the video here is just the dog exploring all the projects that they've set up for the dog. And you can see he's having a great time. At some point, I think he parties with one of the cups and just sort of like, I'm just going to enjoy this cup. Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, that's the extra cup there. Yeah, it's a long video and it was hard for me to cut parts of it because it's adorable. It's an adorable dog doing its thing. But yeah, this is a great activity that will be motivating for your kids, and hopefully they'll participate in it almost every day, or every alternating day a different kid does it. Something like that will be a great way to involve them in this particular activity and take a little bit of the load off from you and get your kids involved in it, right? Okay. And then the next thing that you could involve your kids in with dogs is trick training. And so I would be more, so just to put a little more clarity on what I'm about to say is that trick training is great so long as the tricks are, when it comes to kids and dogs, trick training is great, but what I would like is for the dog to already know the trick and the child is sort of like just helping them practice repetitions of it, right? So you would teach the dog the trick independently, you would, and then your child would be able to practice those tricks with their dog as and when. And the tricks that I'm mentioning here are, again, if you'll notice, tricks that don't involve you physically touching the dog and getting into their space, or sort of like cutesy hugging kind of videos that you see on the internet. It's more about I do something, I say something to my dog does a funny thing for me, and I get joy out of that, right? And so I don't necessarily think it's fair to put the pressure of the children teaching them the trick, but definitely helping them practice it once they have already familiarized it would be great. And so the videos you're about to see are Jericho's trick title submissions. And so I'm just sort of giving you a visual of what those tricks look like. And yes, sit and down are definitely tricks. Anything that you make your dog do, any movements that they do because you've been putting them on a cue is a trick essentially. But yeah, we have other fun ones here. And so he's going to show you the tricks that you could do. And you can see I don't have to physically interact with him for any of those tricks. So we have sit, wave, down, play dead, spin. You can do them in both directions. Backing up. Hide and seek. So before we, I guess I'll let it play. The audio might overlap. So I'm just gonna let y'all see that first. For the hide and seek, I definitely think you may want to be involved in the game and not necessarily just leave the children to do it themselves. A couple of reasons why. One is the dog might give up and your child will get frustrated that they were not looked for, right? And the second thing would be that your children might find really complicated places to hide, and that might be too much for your dog. So you definitely want to help them figure out what's the easiest places they could hide, or help them sort of tweak the difficulty level your dog is able to handle, right? And also you'll be guiding the dog and be like, where is Tom? help find Tom, where is he? And then you're going to sort of like, you know, slowly guide the dog in the direction that they would want to search the child. The other thing I do want to maybe talk about is making sure that when the children are found, that they're excited, but not sort of like getting into the space of the dog and sort of like, you know, getting really hands-on because they were found. And or even if it happens, I want the parent to be there to sort of help regulate everybody, because that can be really overwhelming for the dog. Like, oh God, that was a lot. Like, you know, I didn't ask for that, right? So I definitely think that when you're playing the hide and seek game with a child and a dog, you want, as a parent, you want to be involved in that game. Probably not best to have it like completely by themselves, because both animal and dog could get frustrated, and there could be situations where there's lots of conflict. So this is pretty much similar to free work, where you sort of, the difference is, I would say maybe I would get the dog to sit, stay, or down, stay, or wait somewhere at a distance or behind a gate. And then the child goes and looks for a place that they want to hide this one really yummy cookie. And then the child gets to release the dog to go search for it. And all the child needs to do is sort of like guide the dog to where to look. If the dog is going too far away, they can probably just point towards where the area where the treat is hidden. And so in that sense, it's a little bit different from free work, but it's kind of the same grain of things. And then finally, we have around. Okay, and some of the methods that we use to teach these tricks, we're not going to talk about them today, but you can lure a dog into these positions and then mark yes for whenever they do the right behavior, and then give them a treat. So that's what luring is. Shaping is marking for small approximations, and capturing is when the dog is naturally doing them. Chaining it is taking a few behaviors together and chaining them together. Targeting is when they have to go to a specific location. Social learning is something they learn from other dogs. And then modeling is showing them how to do things. These are really complicated and not something that we want to cover today. But if you are curious about any of these methods, these are the terms you want to look for when you're looking about how to teach behaviors to your dogs. And you definitely want to put some time in teaching them those tricks before you're going to introduce your child into the mix, just to make it easy on both the dog and the child. Oh, I spelled behaviors wrong there. Sorry about that. All right, and the next thing I want to talk about is leash walking. Should we be letting our children walk the dog on a leash? Yes, no? I don't think that they should be walking the dog. It's just not fair to them. Lots of things can go wrong. And I just think that it's one of those boundaries that you probably need to set. But that being said, I always want to think of ways that we can say yes to our children and our dogs in a way that is safe for everybody. So you want to determine, is it an age appropriate activity for your child? You want to be a little more mindful and aware than this parent here in this photo, actually. So in all honesty, this is a photoshopped photo. I wanted to show an example of how a child could be holding the leash, but a parent can be holding another leash. So there are two leashes, one with the adult and the other with the child, and then they get to hold the leash and walk with the dog, but you still have the dog just in case something goes wrong. And I didn't find that on the internet, or I haven't had a chance to try this with a client yet, but that's kind of what it would look like. And so practicing emergency cues in those situations would be really important. So teaching your children what is it that you're going to say when you need them to absolutely drop the leash. And then obviously doing it only in quiet, low traffic areas. But again, I'm more of a, no, your child should not be walking your dog. And you always need to be there, and you always need to be a little more aware of what's happening when your child is the one holding one of the leashes. And then the last thing that we want to talk about today is consent. This is not necessarily a game that you're playing with your dog. However, it is a part of how your dog and your child are going to interact with each other. And so some of the things that I think it's important to sort of have as a routine with your children is to sit down and show them how you're going to do it and model that same behavior with our dogs, obviously. And so it's more commonly known as pet pause pet. I just changed it to pet pause check, because before you pet again, you do have to check, what is the dog saying? So the steps that I have laid out for it, or that's just generally how we do this as professionals, how we tell people to sort of check for consent when you're petting your dogs, is invite the dog. So you're going to put your hands out and say, hi, do you want to come? Do you want to be pet, or whatever word you want to use? And then you're going to watch what the dog does. So does the dog say yes? How does it look when the dog says yes? And I have something really interesting to point out in the video that my friend Isabel, who's stuck in a weird position right now in this frame, is going to do that sort of tells you whether it's yes or no. And then once you're petting them, you want to count to 5 and then get your hands off completely and see, what does the dog say? Does the dog want more? If the dog does not want more, what does that look like? If the dog wants more, what does that look like? And so showing our children what that looks like, learning how that looks ourselves is really important. So Isabel is actually pretty good with dogs, and yet it's very interesting to, when you record yourself and then you see after the fact, you see a lot of things that, you know, you could have done differently. So the first half of the video is just a rough whatever idea I gave her, and then she just did the video. And then when I saw it, I was like, you know, there's a few things I'd like you to do next time. And then they did another one. And so there's 2 videos combined together. Here we go.
So we're going to learn how to properly pet Coda. Okay? So first we're going to call him over. Coda, come here. Come here, Coda. Coda, come here. for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we wait, we see if he wants more. It looks like he wants more. We can pet him some more. Oh, good boy, Coda. You want more? Oh, I think he wants more pets. Good boy, Coda. Wanna come here?
Okay, so before we see the second half, I want to go back here where we sort of, when we're about to sit down and Coda is walking towards Isabel, Isabel stops him with her hand, and then I think a bit physically as well, pushes him a bit back. So that's where the dog is like, I wanted to come to you, but then you moved me away. So, and then also I think either the person who's recording or the child sneezed, somebody sneezed, and that was also a loud sound. So Coda is like, I don't know, I shouldn't be going towards them. And that's why when they call the dog does not want to come. But what I would have liked in that context would be to tell our child, maybe he doesn't want to be pet right now, which is totally not a big deal. These are just, options of what we could do in these situations, right? The goal is to teach our children what no looks like and to be aware of what no looks like, right, ourselves. And so what I would have, in retrospect, I guess, would have done is been like, oh, looks like he doesn't want to be pet. And then maybe I would have tried again, like Isabel does. And then you notice that when Isabel does call her,
Coda, come here.
Coda's like, well, no, I tried to run.
Come here. And then you're going to pet him for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now, Coda is a therapy dog and he's totally used to being pet on the head, everywhere, all of that stuff. And he does kind of look a little bit like unsure about what's happening. And this could be a lot to do with what happened earlier, where he was moved back a little bit when he was trying to come and he's not quite sure what's happening here. Generally speaking, he's a really affectionate dog and wants to be pet. And then once we stop,
It looks like he wants more.
we say to the child, I think he wants more, but the best option would be to explain why. Why do we say that? Like, is it because he's looking at our hands? Is it because, like, down here, he moves forward towards Isabel. And so that's where it's a good idea to explain to your child, oh, look, he moved forward. That's why he wants to be pet. And then you go on to pet. So with some feedback, the other feedback I gave to Isabel in this video was, maybe we tell the child to pet over here because it looks like Coda prefers that. And so in the next video, you'll see that they're talking about him preferring to be pet at the back here.
Yeah, boy, Coda. Wanna come here? All right, let's give him some pets. Yeah, we'll count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we take our hand away. Let's see if he wants more. Oh, I think he might want more. We can pet him a little more. I guess that's where he wants pets today, right? Good job, Coda. Okay. Okay.
So I really love that in the second half, we're counting together, we're petting the dog. We're also mentioning like, this is where he wants to be pet today. Looks like that's why he's, showing us his back. And then when he sits on us, that's showing us that he wants to be pet there. And so that's a much more meaningful interaction, and you're kind of teaching the child as you are interacting with the child. So that's one way of sort of helping them understand how to pet their animal. And obviously you would adapt and change according to the age that you're talking about. What child, how old is the child, how much can they understand, and whether or not they should be petting their dog, things like that, right? But for this to work, we also need to practice consent with our kids for all ages, and the earlier the better, right? So if we're kind of the people who sort of don't ever ask, would you like a hug, or don't listen to our kids when they're saying, no, I don't want to hug, or I don't want to do this right now, or we're not involving some level of consent in our kids' lives, it will be really difficult for us to expect that they can translate that for our dogs. So a very cute example of that here is this one here.
So now we're going to try petting him here. You want to try petting him? You don't want to try petting him? How about here on the side? No? Okay, well.
So you can see the child, looks like the child has a life where they have the ability to say no to things. And what I love about this interaction is Isabel, definitely, sure, she tried to try one more time. But when the child was like, nope, I don't want it, then that was it, right? And so practicing consent with our kids in general is one great way to sort of make sure that that they're also part of that. They expect that and they understand that, because it's also something that they could be doing for their own lives. And so they understand how to apply that to their dogs' lives. All right. I know we're almost at the end. I know it's been a long one, but give me a few more minutes here. Okay, so also teaching our kids what yes looks like. We also need to teach our kids what no looks like. If you see this picture right here, the dog's ears are pinned, they're looking away, their lips are tied, their lips are curved upwards, which is kind of like a smile, but it's not a smile when it comes to dogs. This is not a dog that seems to be happy being held that way. So we also need to understand what it looks like when our dogs are saying yes, and what it looks like when our dogs are saying no. And we also want to be very clear that we want emphatic yes. We want yes, absolutely 100% when our dogs are being pet or touched in some way, right? So teaching our kids that our dogs are individuals just like them and they have their own preferences could be one way to sort of help them understand why we have these boundaries, right? And the same goes for themselves too. We want to teach the kids they have those boundaries as well, and they can also talk about their own boundaries. It can be really challenging to know what a yes and a no in a dog looks like. So I have two completely different dogs here, and the same person doing the same kind of like pet, pause, and assess situation. And you'll see how the two dogs are very different about how they say yes as well as how they say no. So the first dog is Bella and the second dog is Vinny. We're inviting the dog. We stop.
Oh, hi.
She rubs her head in. She turns her body away, but to her back towards her human. And then the dog's like, well, that was too much. And so she walks away. Now, here's Vinny, who usually really loves cuddles, is like so attached to humans that he might melt into you. But right now he looks a little suspicious and conflicting. He yawns. I wouldn't be sure he wants to be pet, and looks like my friend is a little bit like, what's going on? And then he turns around. He's like, okay, you want to pet me? You can maybe pet me. What are you doing, Mom? He says. And Mom is like, I'm not sure what's happening, because this is very unusual for Vinny. Vinny is usually a yes, hell yes kind of dog. But he's tired. He's just come back from regionals, agility regionals. You can see this is not an emphatic yes, right? And so this is the kind of interaction that is probably happening between kids and children, kids and dogs all the time. And if we're not sort of like stopping, and it could escalate really quickly from there on. Luckily, Vinny's like, okay, let's do it. Let's get into this. And he's also a little bit like, I don't know if I want to. And so this is definitely not when I would be letting the child continue. Of course, Joe and Vinny have a really good relationship and they can push those boundaries. But when it comes to our children, we want to sort of be erring on the side of caution always. So yeah, two completely different dogs and two completely different yeses and nos. And so understanding what a yes and no looks like on your dog is really important. And recording yourself while you're petting your dogs can be a really good way to get information on what it looks like. And then you can talk to your kids about what that looks like, right? All right, thank you everyone for joining in. It has been a pleasure working on this, and I definitely want you to take away as much good information as possible. I am personally not necessarily an expert on kids and children, kids and dogs, but I do want to mention 3 really good professionals: Tales of Connection, Indie Does Tricks, and Dog Meets Baby. These are 3 professionals who do every now and then. Actually, Dog Meets Baby full-time talks about babies and dogs. But the other 2 as well are really good with dog and child content. And so if you are able to follow them on Instagram, that would be great, because that's where you can get some really helpful tips. And if you have any questions about anything related to dogs, you can always reach out to me on Instagram and we can chat there. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Namita. Does anyone have any questions? If you have anything quick, please put that in the chat now. And reminders again, I will get the recording posted up to YouTube hopefully tomorrow and send that out to everybody. Thanks again to folks who donated to help make this webinar possible. We really appreciate it. I don't see anything in the chat yet. Namita, I think you might be off the hook.
Okay.
I'll give it 1 more minute.
Hopefully that means that it was good information and not like we have no idea what you're talking about.
I think it was good information. It is all, it is really easy for folks to go, I want my kid to have a great relationship with the dog, but finding ways to actually build that are not just expect the dog to be able to tolerate all of the things or expect the child to be able to follow instructions. It's really nice to have some of these examples. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Namita. I really appreciate you joining us from many worlds away. It's so nice to see your face again. It's been a while since the last one, but
yeah,
thank you so much
absolutely.
for your time. All right, everyone have a good one.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.